Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sips, Riffs, and Flix. This is your host Brandon
and Kevin.
Kevin, we have a very special guest with us this evening.
We do.
By the way, I just developed a list.
I heard that. We have a special guest with us. So we're your episode, I don't know, 12 or 13, and this is our first time having a guest with us, so pretty excited about that.
So welcome, Robert, and I'm going to murder your last name, sir, so just go ahead and jump on in.
Robert Likarish, just like the candy.
No way.
Yeah. No,
I wouldn't have guessed that.
I wouldn't have guessed either, because I would have been scared that it was not that.
It's not licorice. And so, Robert, you are the owner of Ironroot Republic Distillery in Texas. Is that correct?
That is right. I'm one of the family members that owns and runs the distillery.
Awesome.
Well, we actually connected to Robert and your distillery through a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Andy Byers, who traveled all the way from the great state of Texas to North Carolina and brought us a bottle of your whiskey.
He did, yeah. And he started watching the show. He sent us a text. I graduated with Andy in 1998 from North Iredell High School. Brandon went to Statesville. I've not talked to Andy. I'd probably went at least 15 years probably. And then we connected through a brand of coolers, Maluna Coolers, that I'm a marketing consultant for. And we kind of got back our friendship and talked some, and then we started talking bourbon, and he mentioned yours as the number one choice of his. So he came and met us in Statesville one day and brought us a bottle, and we have been eagerly waiting to open it up and taste it.
Yes.
You haven't even cracked it yet. Here we go. Now the pressure's on.
The
first time we ever try anything, we try to do it on film. So,
and we, the one thing about us though, we're real, we're honest. We don't know what we're doing. I mess this up every time. We're whiskey virgins or baby bourbons or whatever the hell it's called, but we're going to give it a whirl.
Yeah. So, Robert, we'll start opening this. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into the business and kind of the process, and we're going to be drinking this one this evening.
You're drinking the Harbinger. That's the 115 proof bourbon for us. So we're you guys are jumping in on the deep end over here.
Hey, we go all in.
When you're talking to a bourbon expert, a man who makes it, and he sees the bottle and goes,
yeah, you had a little grin to you. Yeah. So,
I was going to ask you what before I get to my stuff, what's been like one of your favorite bourbons so far? In again, you guys have been drinking. What's been kind of some of the stuff that you love right now?
One of my favorites is obviously it's Buffalo Trace. I really do. Eagle Rare. I like Benchmark too. It's cheap as $10 here in North Carolina. Cost there in Texas, but it's a great bourbon. And you know what I've been drinking on here recently? It's been reasonably priced. Is Gentleman Jack.
Oh yeah, there you go. Well, this guy's gonna be quite a bit different than any of those that you guys are going into. So, the 115 proof. So that's close to what we would call a cask strength bourbon. So, we're jumping into much higher proof than any of the ones you mentioned. Typically, most bourbons are going to be anywhere from 80 to like 95, 96 proof, which just means that there's been water added to the barrel. So the higher the proof, obviously the more alcohol you're going to get, but it's going to be the more concentrated flavor. So it's going to be a lot bigger and bolder the higher proof you go. So like with Jim Beam, some of their cask strength stuff would be like Booker's, and you can be those 120 proof stuff. You guys heard much about like George T. Stagg or any of those? Those are all going to be those big, really heavy hitting bourbons. And that's kind of what this guy is for us. So, so this is obviously a Texas bourbon, so it's going to be a little bit different than the Kentucky bourbons. First and foremost, the grains are going to come from a very different place. So, it's kind of crazy to talk to people, but grain grown in different parts of the country actually tastes different. But it's just like, if you were to look at it, it can compare to wine, where different grapes grapes grown in different places taste different. It's the same thing when it comes to grains. Now, it's not quite as drastic as it is with grapes, but it's still definitely there. The other thing for us, it's really important. So when you were asking about our background a little bit, my brother and I'll get into how we got into everything here in a little bit, but we are actually trained by a master cognac distiller. So a lot of our approach is really similar to the kind of a French style philosophy. And one of their big things is what they call terroir, which means like the flavor of the land. So part of what was drilled into us kind of in our early distilling age was to focus on trying to get the flavor of your local area, because something should taste like it comes from somewhere, I guess is kind of the point. So for us, 95% of the grain comes from within 60 miles of the distillery. So when you're looking at it, we use a lot of corns, we actually have a lot of heirloom varieties of corn. So there's like red corn and purple corn and all sorts of crazy stuff in there. And so because it is a higher percentage corn, you're going to get quite a bit different flavor profile than the Kentucky guys, especially if you're used to some of that high rye stuff like Eagle Rare, Buffalo Trace, some of that stuff that's got a little bit more rye in it. This guy is going to be very low rye, so it's only going to be about 3% rye, but you're going to get a lot of corn, a lot of sweetness from it, but a lot of kind of baking spices. I don't know, you guys can jump into it and tell me what you taste, and we can go through it on that.
Damn thing of what you're saying, but I'm
and so last week we tried Bullet Bourbon on the show. And I think it was 90 proof. Is that right?
I think so.
And we tried a new process for tasting bourbon that Andy actually told us about, and we don't know if we did it right or not, but we absolutely got lit on fire last week. So, so maybe you can help us with this tasting process.
Yeah, sure. So, and again, for me, tasting is a very different thing than drinking. When you're drinking, drink things the way that you're enjoying it, what makes drinking enjoyable, because that's the entire point of drinking. A lot of people get hung up on whether you should add water or whatnot.
Yeah.
Drinking is for enjoyment and for hanging out with friends and enjoying what you're doing. And so drink things the way that you want them. When you're doing tasting and like analysis stuff, like what I do, there's some different things you can do to try to get used to it. So the very first thing that we generally do, again, you're going to smell it a couple times, kind of see, again, smell the kind of the sweetness level, I guess, is one of the biggest things, how much alcohol is coming off that. Again, this guy, especially just being brand new opened, it's going to be a little bit more spicy than it will be here in a week or so after you've opened the bottle and let it breathe for a little bit. But you're going to notice, again, that's going to be just starting out. Those are two really kind of easier things to pick up, kind of a sweetness level and kind of alcohol strength coming off your glass. Okay. From there, typically what we do is you take one little sip and go ahead and swallow it. And that's going to be basically the shot across the bow for your body, knowing that, hey, I'm about to drink something, especially when you got something high proof, because it's going to come in, it's going to be intense. Yeah. And then the second sip is generally when we say, taste it, hold it in your mouth, kind of move it around and see what you can taste. Because after that, your body's been kind of prepped for what you're about to do to yourself.
So we did it backwards. Last week, we did our first little taste, and what Andy told us, we chewed on it. So we left it in our mouth. We switched around, held it. And then the second one, we just took down. So we did it back.
Yeah. You got to do it the opposite way on that. The other thing, especially with high proof, like what this guy is, especially when you're not used to high proof yet, definitely get a little bit of saliva going in your mouth before you go for the one where you actually hold it in your mouth, because that'll help dilute it a little bit. But yeah, the high proof stuff is typically the longer and the more people drink, they tend to shift a little bit towards higher proof as they go, just because it is going to be way more flavorful and you become more accustomed to that proof in your body. Like for me, 90 proof stuff anymore, just watery. Like it doesn't taste like a whole lot to me anymore.
Pours a lot of whiskey.
That's right.
Well, man, while we're going to do this, and then I also want to learn a little bit more about the name, how you guys came on Ironroot.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you having a drink with us?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he smelled. All right, so we're going.
Okay, smell.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
Cheers, man.
Cheers, guys.
Ironroot. I definitely get this. Yep, there it is.
yeah.
That spice.
There it comes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Why does everything get called up on my YouTube?
So initial, first shot down, It's actually a lot smoother than I anticipated.
It was a lot better than that bullet we did last week.
It was. I was going to say that bullet was way harder to go down than that, for sure.
Which, again, when you're looking at it, that's crazy because this is way more alcohol in this guy than what's in that bullet that you were drinking.
I can feel it.
Oh, yeah.
I can feel my face getting warm and the top of my head starting to sweat a little. But
I'm gonna have a hard time driving that golf cart home.
but I mean, seriously, just at first taste, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not. I've been nervous all day about this. But that first taste, I was afraid it was gonna hit me bad, and I didn't want to have to say something, to be negative. Which we're very honest, but I mean, I'm being dead serious. That was way more smooth
because you ain't chawed on
That's
it yet.
But I'm saying that first initial scary one was not that bad at all.
No. All right.
No, and that's what you're going to find with higher percentage corn bourbons. They're going to be, there's a little bit more sweetness and it's a little bit softer. For us, we use a traditional Scottish style pot still for distillation. So a lot more of the heavier oils and stuff will come over in the distillation process. So it tends to make, even at higher alcohol, especially at a little bit higher alcohol, it tends to soften it a little bit. And also creates almost a little bit more of like a velvety feel when you're tasting it. It has almost like a little bit more thickness, viscosity to it when you're drinking.
As random as that is, I did taste the thickness and the spice.
Yeah.
So I definitely did that. So now we kind of swish around a little bit. Is that right?
Yeah. Now get a little bit of saliva in your mouth and just take a little sip and just kind of move it around and kind of mix it up with everything that's going on.
That was, man, that spice will get you, boy.
That is a very spicy, after like a kick.
Mm-hmm.
It's that initial is smooth. You're like, well, that's not bad. By the time you get to that's not bad,
And then it starts getting on you a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Gave the inside of my mouth this different, like almost like a pucker effect to the inside of my mouth.
I definitely get like the spice of it.
Yes.
Like you talked about the spice. I definitely get that out of it.
So now what you're getting when you get that spice, that's actually that's wood tannins. So that's what's kind of feel like a little bit of a prickliness all over your tongue. And that's actually the tannin from the wood that is actually doing that to your tongue.
It actually feels like my mouth is a turned inside out asshole. Right now,
so now that you guys have tried it, do you have any water with you at all?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So now just take just a tiny bit of water, add a little bit of water to it. So I got a little water dropper.
Oh, look at that.
You're talking just a
little, not even a capful, really.
Yeah. Just dump a little bit in there. Let it mix up for a little bit.
Let me ask you this. I noticed that you're using a different glass to drink with than we are. We're using
so this is called a Glencairn. So it's the basically Scottish whiskey glass that the Scots use for smelling and tasting whiskey, especially their blenders. They'll use what's called like a copita. So it's got this bowl, but then kind of gets thinner at the top. What that does is it kind of concentrates all the different aromas and everything. So if you were actually to smell something out of your glass and smell something out of this glass, it actually would smell different just based on how it concentrates things.
The science and like the chemistry behind all
It's all my life I've just been drinking to get buzzed up, and who knew there was all this to it.
And make bad decisions.
All right.
All right.
So yeah, I'll give it another shot.
That little splash, not even a dab, if you will, dropper of water just cut it and made it so much more smooth.
It is super smooth.
Oh yeah.
We just totally wrecked our palates from the other stuff. So maybe that could be mine too. But that is way, way smoother.
That's really smooth, actually.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. It is crazy.
Yeah.
It's interesting the process behind like whiskeys and coffee and wine. Like you can nerd out on the stuff if you wanted to. And even
it's a rabbit hole. Yeah, you can dive deep.
So now, How did you guys come up with the name Ironroot?
So that comes from the history of our town. It's kind of a little bit of a long story, but back in the late 1800s, there was a guy living in the town of Denison, Texas, and his name was T.V. Munson, and he was a viticulturist, so a guy that studied growing grapes. And back in that time period, what they were discovering is the grapes that were native to the United States the grapes were terrible for winemaking. Just couldn't make a quality wine for all get out. And so they were trying to bring over the European grapes here and trying to grow them here in the United States and make wines here. And what they discovered is that they could plant them, but after a year or two, the plants would generally die off. There'd be some sort of, we have all these plant diseases here that they didn't have any immunity to. So they would plant them here and they would kind of die off. And the particular stuff that attacks like the root systems of the different plants. And so he discovered that there was a native, a southern grape that was essentially immune to something called phylloxera, which is what really kind of destroys grapes. And he was able to graft the French grapes on top of this rootstock, and he's able to start growing them and have them survive. And so you had a couple things happen during that time period. Out in California, they were trying to grow grapes, and phylloxera got really bad over there and kind of wiped out everything they were doing. He started shipping them these new grape roots, and so with these French grapes on them. So that's when California kind of switched from doing a bunch of Spanish grapes to now what they're famous for, like Pinot Noir and Chardonnay and all that. So that's early 1800s. A few years later, that phylloxera, that disease, got transferred from the U.S. over to Europe, and it kind of went to town. It wiped out over 80% of the French grapes. Most of the European grape growing was decimated. So you're talking Bordeaux, Burgundy, Cognac, all those regions. There was essentially nothing left. And so the French, obviously, they freaked out a bit. And so they started searching all over the world trying to find a solution. And they found through the Smithsonian, this crazy guy in Texas that developed this grafting technique. And next thing you know, we start shipping grapes over there. So now actually most of the European grapes are actually grown on top of root systems from Texas, from the southern United States.
Wow.
So for that reason, it's the France obviously celebrated that, and they named Denison sister cities with Cognac, and they built a statue of the guy who did it in Cognac, France. And so it was the iron grape roots from Texas that saved the French wine industry.
That's awesome.
So it kind of pays homage a little bit to my brother and my background on as far as the distilling side of things, and kind of why we ended up in Denison to begin with.
You know, think about this. 1800s, right? They had to search through the Smithsonian. And think about how long that took. I mean, they're sending letters with pigeons. Now you can just type that into Google and find out in 2 minutes.
Right.
And there's an email.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, think of the work and the dedication it took to find this gentleman here in Denison.
Denison, yeah.
Texas. Get out of here.
So, let me start over. Our listeners, that would like to get their hands on this, can they order it online? I don't think we can find this at our local ABC stores, correct?
No, you can't get anything in the ABC in North Carolina, but at Total Wines across the country, you can get it. So down in South Carolina, they do have it. And they'll have both our 115 proof, like what you're drinking right now, and also our 90 proof bourbon.
Okay.
And so
we do have a Total Wine in Mooresville or Huntersville, yeah.
So maybe they could order it for us.
Probably.
If they sell liquor, they should be able to order it for you.
Okay. I can't remember if they do or not.
I don't think so, but I've been wrong most of my life.
Yeah, I think North Carolina is all ABC, if my memory serves correctly on that.
But can people order this from your website?
You can, but unfortunately, the state of Texas is also very backwards in its laws, and you have to come physically pick it up from the distillery. I can't ship it.
Okay. I wasn't sure how all that worked. Or you can have Andy Byers deliver it to you.
That's right. Just call Andy. He'll take care of
you. So when you first started, like, when was the moment that you knew, like, hey, we want to your family jump into distilling whiskey? I mean, is that your background? Is that what you guys did? Are you chemists? Or are you?
Not at all. I'll give a little bit of background just on myself and my brother. So on my undergrad schooling, I went to a school here in Texas, Austin College, for economics and Asian studies. That was my undergrad degree. And then I went to law school in St. Louis at St. Louis University and graduated law school from there. My brother is a graduate from Texas Tech. He got an undergrad degree in industrial engineering and also a pre-med background. And then he got a master's degree in biomedical engineering from St. Louis University and a mechanical engineering master's from Washington University.
How many degrees does he have? I lost count.
Me too. He's got like 4 degrees, 3 or 4 degrees.
Okay, your brother's wicked smart.
Yeah, he's crazy. So kind of how we got into this, years prior, we went to a family reunion up in Spokane, Washington. And we, as a family, went to this Thai food restaurant. And as we were exiting, we noticed there was this place next door in this shopping center that said it was a distillery. And we've been to wineries, been to breweries, but never been to a distillery before. So kind of wandered in. When we wandered in, we saw these big, beautiful copper stills. And my family's been in the copper mining industry for generations. And so it's kind of something in our blood. When we saw those copper stills, my brother and I were like, that's it. When we retire, that's what we're going to do. And my dad was like, yeah, that's when you guys retire. That's what you should just set up shop, create a little tiny distillery. And so that was what we said we were going to do when we retired. Fast forward to me getting ready to graduate from law school at Christmas dinner before I graduated in May. And I decided to announce to my family that it's not going to be a lawyer anymore. I'm going to get my degree, but I wanted to learn how to distill and just go ahead and start it now. So my brother looks at my mom, and because he's just got his first job, his 401k, he's first child born. He's like, well, if he's doing that, I'm not going to sit in a cubicle all day long. I'm going to do that too. So we lost 2 well-paying secure jobs for 0 secure jobs. And we kind of dove into it, started touring around the country, going and interning at different distilleries. And through that process, we ran into this gentleman named Hubert Germain Rabon, who's was a master cognac distiller that moved over to California in the 80s. And him and his apprentice, Nancy Fraley, kind of took us under their wing and really started teaching us distilling, some of the old school methodology on distilling. And from there, we knew we wanted to branch out and do a little bit of whiskey and stuff. And we felt we were ready. And my brother's wife and he and I are both originally from Texas. So we knew we were going to come back to Texas to start. And we decided to go to Denison because it's sister cities with cognac, and jumped in. And again, we started working with some of the local distillers that were already here and talking to them about aging things here, because aging in Texas is completely different than Kentucky or cognac or Scotland, just because it's so crazy hot here. And so through that, we kind of developed using some of the older kind of French techniques to kind of mitigate and use ways to handle the heat here in Texas a little bit differently than some of the other distilleries. And again, I can get into that here in a few minutes, but yeah, that was kind of how we kind of got into it, and kind of a number of year journey from graduating from law school to just kind of being a wild person traveling around the U.S. learning how to make booze.
How long have you guys been open?
We've been open. We put our first barrel of whiskey down 6 years ago. About 6 years and 1 month now. So we're still a really young distillery.
And how has the community embraced you guys?
So one of the other great things about Denison is Denison's always been kind of a little bit of a wilder town. It was one of the few, even back in the day, that's always been wet. And so when we were first coming to Texas and looking for a community to set up a distillery in, we'd approach the cities and be like, hey, we want to put a distillery here. And immediately the answer was, nope, we don't want that type of business here. No booze in our towns. And Denison was the first town that went, you know what? We think that's an awesome idea. Where can we put you? Can we put you right on the main street? Because even like some places, they're like, well, maybe we'll put you in an industrial park out in the middle of nowhere. But they wanted us front and center, and the community really embraced us from the very beginning. And It's crazy. Even some of the church ladies that originally didn't want us in town now, through, again, after the beginning of the pandemic and all the sanitizer that we were making and stuff, that we got phone calls from the Baptist church, the ladies saying that I've never drank booze in my life, but I want to buy a t-shirt because of what you boys are doing. So like the whole community now is just really embraced what we've done and kind of the whole thing. There's
a funny saying around here in our area anyway. Do you know the difference between a Baptist and a Methodist in the liquor store?
The Methodists will look you in the eyes?
Yeah, exactly. We actually have a distillery here in Statesville that opened probably about the same time, 6 years ago or whatnot. It's called Southern Distillery.
Oh, and, nice.
I can't remember the date. We're going to try to have them guys on at some point as well again. But Statesville, at one point, I think it was the turn of the century, was actually the liquor capital of the world. They shipped about 30 to 40,000 gallons a day out of Statesville, North Carolina.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that, you brought up with when COVID hit and all, Southern Distilling, they switched over and started making the hand sanitizer too. And it was crazy how, local businesses, one thing we love about our town, and it sounds like you're kind of in the same boat with us. Oh, yeah. Our town really supports local business owners, take care of each other. Everybody tries to support each other, shop local. And just the amount of people that were business owners and would go to Southern Distilling and just buy cases of hand sanitizer just to help them. And, it was hard to find at the time, but I thought it was cool that, and it sounds like you guys did the same thing, that you switch your business to fit the times to not only help yourself, but it helps others, which, is a win-win. I think that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was. I mean, I'll tell you what, it was crazy because we got a phone call randomly from our local hospital that said, and they were like, we have 2 days worth of sanitizer left. We need. Is there anything you can do? And so we never sold any sanitizer. We didn't actually do any final formulation. We just made the alcohol and we got it out to all the pharmacies, and they took care of making it and donating it to all the places. But it was crazy there for a little bit.
Yeah.
I tell you what.
They have sold a buttload.
They have sold a lot.
I can imagine.
Yeah, they've helped out for sure.
So that I don't forget to say this. So earlier when we were talking, you was like, when it comes time to drink to enjoy, drink it however you want to drink it. There's no rules. I'm a big fan of bourbon and Coke. So while you were talking a little bit ago, I snuck back there and got me some ice, poured some of this in here and mixed it with a little bit of Coke. This is the best bourbon and Coke I've ever had. It's so good.
So of the gods with that.
So I hope that doesn't make you mad that I'm mixing, but I'm serious. Like, I have tried a lot of bourbons mixed with Coke. This is by far the best one I've ever had.
Thank you very much. No, my brother has a very, very strict rule of any bourbon that we make at the distillery has to have what he calls Cokeability. It's got to go well with Coke, otherwise we don't blend it.
Well, that's kind of my rating system with bourbon. Like, we can do the fine tastes and stuff, but I don't get my real review till I've got it in the glass with some ice and Coke in it. And I'm serious. This is the smoothest bourbon and Coke I've ever had. It is so good.
I'll have to tell them that. And we've been trying to come up with a rating system, and maybe Robert, you can help us. We cannot figure out something that's funny, catchy, simple. Not 2 thumbs up, nothing like that. I don't know. Cokeability is good. Yeah. But, we also rate beer. We're going to be rating some wine, too, in the future. We're learning as we go. So you can think of a good rating system, let us know.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And later tonight, just so you know, like, the type of people we are and how we don't know what we're doing. So we're going to go from talking with you, drinking this very fine whiskey here. I mean, I'm really enjoying this whiskey. We're going to record another podcast a little bit later where we're going to be talking about the series Cobra Kai that's on Netflix.
Oh, heck yeah. I'm in the middle of season 2 right now.
Yeah. So we're gonna review that, and I actually went and found today some Coors Banquet beer in the little Grenader bottles. We're gonna drink that at the same time while we talk about it.
Exactly.
So we're gonna really switch gears tonight.
I love it.
So tell all the listeners out there, and we'll also put this, when I post this on YouTube to the Appetite for Discussion channel and on all the podcasting platforms, how they can find you.
You can find us online on Facebook at Root Republic Distilling. You can, or Ironroot Whiskey, just type that into Google. It's going to come up with all our stuff. We've got our website. You can come visit us, do tours, buy bottles, do the whole shebang. If you're not in Texas, again, the easiest place to find us is going to be at Total Wine and More. I think there's in 38 states or something like that now. So definitely trying to get out there and spread the wings a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you have an Instagram page as well?
We do. Ironroot at Ironroot Whiskey.
I'll tell you what, if you do me a favor, send me all of your website and social media things, and then I'll put them on I'll put them on the description.
Yeah, for sure.
So one last question I want to ask before we go, because I know it's late. How hard was it for you guys to go from the distillery into a Total Wine to distribution?
It is probably one of the most difficult things to do as a small producer, especially again. I think the distribution of liquor in the U.S. is kind of a crazy. Every state is completely different in how it's set up. Again, it's a lot of what's left over from Prohibition. For us, we were fortunate in that we had a lot of good teachers early on, and so one of our kind of mentors and friends in the industry, Balcones Distillery, a place that we kind of interned for a while as well. They had just really hit it big, and our relationship with them helped us get our first distribution deal. And that was, again, right now it's extremely difficult, especially to get with one of the bigger distribution chains. It's, and then for like in Texas, it's like some states you can sell directly to liquor stores. For us, we have to sell to a distributor, and distributor has to sell to a liquor store, and liquor stores have to sell to restaurants. And the liquor store that sells to the restaurant has to be in the same county. So even if I sell into a major chain, if they don't carry it in that particular county or have a warehouse in that county, I can't always get it to restaurants. So it's a super convoluted deal. And up until this last year, I wasn't even allowed to go into liquor stores or restaurants without a distributor rep with me to try to sell my product. And I got to go with them on sales calls twice a year. Wow. So I could essentially pick up, I was legally allowed to, without them coming and buying, without me going and talking to them, about 6 different accounts a year. So it's tough. And a lot of it has to be through, again, fans and friends going out into those stores and asking them to order stuff, because again, we weren't legally allowed to until literally this September.
So now you can.
Now we can. We finally got that law changed and removed. But it was for 6 years. It was pretty crazy.
Wow. Well, cheers to you guys for following your dream, making it happen. We love meeting people like you, talking to people like you that, you went to law school, going to be a lawyer, decided that just wasn't going to make you happy. Went and, like you said, walked away from a paycheck and went to zero and followed your dream. And sounds like y'all are making it happen. So cheers to you guys.
It's a tough slog, but I tell you what, it's been worth it. It's been a crazy ride these last 6 years, but everything's, again, hard work pays off at the end of the day.
The American dream is real, people.
True.
You can do it.
And I truly appreciate the fact, like we were talking about the small business, that you guys use grains and stuff from local businesses. You said within 60 miles. I think that's awesome. It sounds like you guys are doing some really cool things. So maybe when we can start traveling again without all the hassle, we'll come to Texas and check you guys out.
Hey, anytime you guys want to come to Dallas, you let me know. I'll take care of you.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And tell your brother the cookability of this one, A+.
I will tell him.
Well, thanks, Robert. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for everything that you're doing. And Kevin, anything?
No. Well, I really appreciate talking to you. It's been super interesting, and we'll have to do a part 2. We try not to keep people too long, but I feel like we have some more questions for you coming.
Yeah. Let's get to it.
We have to try something else.
Yeah.
I'll send you some more whiskey. Don't you worry.
All right, buddy.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, buddy. Take care.
Cheers.